Thank you, Sikholars, for having me to talk about Mohan Singh. When I described what I was going to be presenting to a friend, he commented, "You just do weird stuff. That's just what you do." And I don't know how to feel about that, especially after hearing comments like that for several years. I tend to, like Rupi, get very obsessive and focused into things that hold my interest. And when you're lost in the archives for years at a time, you can end up feeling like you're just doing weird stuff. I was kind of comforted last year hearing the family of Ajit Singh Mathur talk about his life and his scholarship, and I think there are parallels there. I remember at the time smiling to myself and thinking, I may be a scholarly fool, but I'm not alone. In the same way that he wanted to kind of obsessively track down information, and by visiting everything possible, maybe you can come up with new knowledge, and maybe that new knowledge can give voice to people who have been lost or forgotten in history. That's very much what this project on Mohan Singh is about. It started in a really bizarre way. My primary focus for research right now is the early history of yoga in the United States. And for several years, I've been going through display advertisements and ephemera and pamphlets and photographs and tracking down little bits and pieces. And I kept coming across this man, Yogi Hari Rama. He is just as mysterious as he was prominent and popular. For a several-year period in the 1920s, Yogi Hari Rama seemed to be everywhere, but he appeared out of nowhere. He just shows up in 1925, and then about 3.5 years later, he disappears and vanishes without a trace. And it always bothered me, it always stuck in the back of my mind, who was he? Where did he come from? He would never miss a chance to announce himself as a man of mystery who would appear in a city never to return again. And as I kept obsessively doing research and doing searches after searches and going to archive after archive, I finally struck pay dirt, thanks in no small part to Yogi Hari Rama's very unusual appearance. He was incredibly skinny, incredibly tall, he had a large nose, and he had 2 eyes that were very closely set together. He would be instantly recognizable in any police lineup. And that is why I terrified my wife when I screamed, "Oh my God," from another room when I came across this. Yogi Hari Rama was actually Mohan Singh. In May of 1912, newspapers around the country were all abuzz with news that a man from India had become a certified aviator. He was, in fact, the first person from India to become a licensed pilot. And this is in the early days of aviation. To give you some indication, his pilot license number, his brevet, was number 123. Mohan Singh studied with a man named Glenn Curtis, a pioneering aviator. And he studied with him in San Diego. Glenn Curtis had a powerful international reputation as an aviation pioneer, and his schools wanted to cultivate an air of cosmopolitanism and of being international centers for flight, and Mohan Singh played into this perception. He was joined by aspiring aviators from Japan, France, and Poland, and he himself added a very powerful air of mystery to himself. He rarely spoke. He was known among his classmates for being vegetarian, hardly ever smiling, dressing very sharply, and drinking only water. The fact that he was the first man from India to become a licensed aviator, I think, runs the risk of taking away from just how deft and accomplished an aviator he was. He was not only proficient in regular airplanes. After he obtained his license, he went to Hammondsport, New York, where he learned to fly some of the first hydroplanes. He was also a performer known in the time as a barnstormer. There he is again. In aerial circuses, he performed stunt flying for massive crowds in the Midwest. There he is, second from the bottom, as licensed. Major Mohan Singh. He seems to have had a very close relationship with Glenn Curtis. Mohan Singh, travels abroad twice, and on the last time he travels with Glenn Curtis to Europe in 1913. Glenn Curtis went to Europe to give demonstrations, to talk to governments, and to talk to militaries to convince them that they should invest in this thing known as the airplane in the years leading up to the First World War. Mohan Singh seems to be the only non-family member to join Glenn Curtis on these trips. What happens to Mohan Singh, this flying man of mystery, after he comes back from England and Europe with Glenn Curtis? Does he become a businessman in his own right? Does he become a pilot? Does he become a celebrity? He becomes a butler. The man of mystery, before he became this pioneering flying Hindu, according to the newspapers, was a butler in Chicago. He arrives in the United States in 1906 and worked as a house servant for an affluent family in Chicago until 1910, where he catches the flying bug and begins to study with Glenn Curtis. Despite claims in the press that he was a major and then sometimes a captain in the British Indian Army, he seems to have had no real military record to speak of, despite claims of him being a prince and being from alternately Bombay and Delhi. He seems to have been born in 1885 from the village of Himitpura in the present Moga district. He becomes a butler, learns to fly, and then everything kind of comes full circle. He moves to Los Angeles, where again he works as a house servant and a chauffeur for an affluent family in Los Angeles. And I think it's very bleak and depressing to think that at this time how low the glass ceiling for South Asian immigrants in the United States was, that he would, this was the best that he could do, work as a chauffeur for a rich family. If possibilities were limited for non-American citizens, that didn't seem to stop Mohan Singh. He applied twice in 1914 and 1916 for naturalization. There's something very unusual about citizenship, American citizenship during this time. It is inextricably linked to ideas of whiteness. To become an American citizen, you need to be white. And for South Asians in the United States, no one knows exactly what they are. America has this very strongly held racial binary. People are black or they are white. And if you're not obviously either, we don't quite know what to do with you. And I'm sure, as Jasmine can tell you at length, there are a whole host of bizarre and fascinating and intriguing court cases where judges and attorneys try to determine exactly whether or not people from India are white or not. They are often compared to Syrians and people from the Mideast. In one fascinating example I found, a man from South Asia was denied American citizenship. He was told that anthropological textbooks of the time may say that you are Aryan and Caucasian, but you are not white. If we find space aliens from Mars and they come to Earth, it's not to say that even though they're not Caucasian, that they may not be white, but you are not white. There were all kinds of interesting strategies that people employed to gain citizenship. Some people, like a man named Sakram Ganesh Pandit, that we'll see a little bit later, actively fought against the system and tried to build bridges with African Americans and other oppressed people in America during that time. Other people, like Bhagat Singh Thind, actively tried to claim whiteness, and in his case before the Supreme Court, Thind actually aligned himself not only with a Aryan Caucasian white identity, but he tried to claim that his lineage was compatible with segregation and white supremacy in America. So as Mohan Singh struggles for citizenship in 1918 and 1919, he becomes a test case to determine whether or not Hindus, according to the term of the time, were in fact white or not. And the judge finds that he is white and he is granted citizenship. His lawyer that helps steer him through these choppy legal seas is this man, Sakram Ganesh Pandit, a man from Bengal who comes to Chicago, hosted by the Theosophical Society, and then after a series of false starts and scandals, becomes, according to himself, the only Hindu attorney in the United States. And so he leads Mohan Singh through citizenship. One very interesting term, how do we get from Mohan Singh to Yogi Hari Rama? It occurs in stages. Mohan Singh declared to the LA Times a few years after he was made an American citizen that he wanted to change his name to Hari Mohan. And his reasonings were very interesting. He said, all my friends call me Harry anyway, and I don't like the surname Singh because I keep getting mistaken for being Chinese, because it's a common Chinese surname at the time. And I think this is an interesting reminder of how few South Asians there were in the United States in this time. If immigrants were a minority in the United States and Asian immigrants were a minority of a minority, South Asians were only a few thousand at their most for the Second World War. They are a minority within a minority within a minority. And America has so little familiarity with people from India that they commonly confuse the Punjabi Sikh man with the Chinese. What happens after the Bhagat Singh Thind case, after Thind loses his request to become an American citizen, the government conducts a wave of denaturalization proceedings against South Asians who had previously been granted citizenship. I think it's a bleak parallel to our own times. Mohan Singh, like many others, gets his citizenship revoked, and not very often are legal papers poetic, but there's something morbidly poetic about the fact that the court case that strips Mohan Singh of his citizenship is in fact glued on top of his previous oath of allegiance to the United States. In order to become an American citizen, immigrants had to renounce previous loyalties and previous citizenship. So for immigrants from India, that meant renouncing their citizenship in the British Empire. So that left, according to the term of the time, that left all of these people who were denaturalized as, quote, men without a country, citizens of nowhere, unable to leave and unable to return. So what does Mohan Singh or Hari Mohan do in a response to being stripped of his citizenship? It seems that he does something uniquely bold, creative, and audacious. He becomes a yoga teacher. He styles himself as Dr. Hari Mohan, seer of India, psychologist and metaphysician. He begins in Southern California, and then he works his way up north, where, you can't make this stuff up, he aligns himself with an alcoholic Cockney British fortune teller who was run out of Los Angeles and became enmeshed in the Japanese Buddhist community of the Bay Area, named Swami Mazzini Ananda. And you can see the Right Reverend's love of honorary titles and how that kind of rubbed off on Dr. Hari Rama Mohan, Hindu Master Guru and Yogi of Benares, India. This seems to have been a finishing school, and Swami Mazzini Ananda has connections with many metaphysical teachers of that time. And then Yogi Hari Rama takes it a step further, and he kind of assembles his complete package as a traveling yoga master. And he does this through really audacious acts of plagiarism from his contemporaries. From Wasan Singh, known as Suprakashi Yogi Wasan, Yogi Hari Rama steals charts and exercises. Here we have Yogi Wasan's chart and then Yogi Hari Rama's chart on the right. Exercises from the former and then the latter. From the Vedantist from Lahore, Swami Ramtirt, Yogi Hari Rama takes a collection of his sayings and then just signs his name to the previously published introduction. And in my favorite act of plagiarism, he apparently signs up for Yogananda's private course of teachings and then just puts his name on it. And this is an angry letter from Yogananda's Self-Realization Fellowship in 1935 about this man who has stolen the secret teachings and just went around the country teaching them as his own. So Yogananda had this practice of sending the attention and the will to different parts of the body, and Yogi Hari Rama just took it literally number by number and came up with his own practice that he called the Master of the House exercise, where you relaxed or you laid down and then you sent your will and your attention. The Master of the House commanded the will and the attention to go to these different parts of the body. And I interviewed the grandchildren of a pair of sisters who were original students of Yogi Hari Rama, and apparently he added an aviation twist to it. He had the students send attention to different parts of the body, but then vibrate them at different levels, almost like pushing down on a gas pedal. So Yogi Hari Rama tours around the country over a period of 3.5 years, and these are the locations that I found where he taught. Adding to his mystery and allure, he said that he only went to a city but once, never to return. I imagine this also helped keep Yogi Hari Rama one step ahead of the law. Here's a list of cities that he taught in. Like most of his contemporaries, teachings were done on a series of levels. He would give public lectures, and these public lectures, usually free of charge, would feed into paid private courses. And these private courses would on occasion lead to private one-on-one dyadic relationships, counseling, or healing sessions. From the few descriptions we have of Yogi Hari Rama, the New Yorker does a short profile on him when he's in Manhattan. He seems to be a very deft businessman. He knows how to promote himself. He knows how to organize his classes. He knows how to make lots of money. And by some of the more outraged accounts of his travels across the US, he seems to be very adept at making money. He gets a lot of students, and by some estimates, he makes a small fortune over 3.5 years going around the country. His last teachings are in Los Angeles in the late summer of 1928. After Los Angeles, we have no sign of Yogi Hari Rama, Hari Mohan, or Mohan Singh. He seems to completely disappear off the face of the earth. Before he does, he establishes the Benares League of America, and this is their logo, appropriately enough, baldly plagiarized from the logo of the Theosophical Society of America. He authorizes 13 Americans to act as his representatives in the United States to continue the noble spiritual work of super yoga science. And these 13 teachers carry on the work, and they, for the most part, operate in the same cities that Yogi Hari Rama taught in. This is the cities that Yogi Hari Rama taught in. These are the cities that the Benares League of America had representative teachers in. For a very short while, the Benares League of America was incredibly well organized. They seem to have had standard pamphlets and advertising templates. Many of the teachers, this is A. William Goetz and Franklin Merrill Wolfe, they seem to have a matching uniform. They would wear bright red sashes with the words "Disciple of the Absolute" emblazoned on them. And it is a very large organization, and for a brief while, it does very well. I found records of super yoga science classes simultaneously being held in different parts of the country on the same evening, but very quickly the organization falls apart without a central figure there, without the charisma of an exotic teacher from Asia, without continued materials being produced by Yogi Hari Rama. It loses its momentum. The organization of the Benares League falls apart. Teachers start overlapping with each other's territories. People pass away. The Benares League of America seems to only remain into the 40s and 50s in the Midwest, in states like Ohio and Minnesota. So what is the lasting legacy of Yogi Hari Rama? Surprisingly, perhaps shockingly, he builds in less than 4 years the largest yoga organization of its time. I was stunned to see not only how large his classes were and how large the Benares League of America was, but also how relatively small more recognizable names like the Vedanta Society and Yogananda Self-Realization Fellowship were. At its height, comparable yoga organizations, perhaps all comparable yoga organizations, could have been contained within the size of the Benares League. It was that big. And Yogi Hari Rama had a very powerful reputation for a few years after he left. This is from, I believe, early 1930s. I suppose the best teacher from India who ever came to this country was Yogi Hari Rama. I am told that his birth was registered in his native place in 1828. He is therefore over 100 and looks from his picture like a man of 35 with wonderful penetrating eyes. Perhaps the strangest influence that we can trace back from Yogi Hari Rama in his teachings comes from this man. He was born as Robert Hansen, and he was memorialized at his death as Subramania Swami, who was recognized as the leader of up to 5 million Tamil Hindus. And he was the founder of a monastery in Hawaii and the founder of the magazine Hinduism Today. He was recognized by many people in the 1990s as the most influential non-Indian Hindu in the world. And one of the strongest influences on his development as a guru was his teacher in the Bay Area, a woman who went by the name of Mother Kristini, who was a student of Yogi Hari Rama. Yogi Hari Rama claimed that he had the ability to levitate, and that is very interesting because in his book, Subramania Swami talks about how he went to India to pursue these mythic yogis and holy men who he sincerely believed had the power to levitate. I wonder where he got that idea from. Mohan Singh's legacy was diminished by an accident of names. Another aviator, younger than him, Mohan Singh, who studied in England, won a prize offered by the Aga Khan for a long-distance flight. And it seems that aviation historians have confused the two and simply subsumed the accomplishments of Mohan Singh within the larger story of Mohan Singh. Perhaps most interestingly is what we would do with a figure like Mohan Singh. How does he fit in other histories of prominent Punjabi Americans? Like Deslippe Singh Sand, Mohan Singh is a pioneer. He was a first and incredibly accomplished at what he did. Mohan Singh perhaps should be remembered for his successes, but he's also forgotten in part due to his successes. His initial efforts for American citizenship in 1919 have an intriguing footnote. It was said while the test case was being heard that if he was found to not be white and to not be eligible for American citizenship, his attorney was ready, willing, and able, and likely to pursue that case all the way up to the Supreme Court. So 4 years before Tind versus the United States, we could have very likely have had Mohan Singh versus the United States. I think just as intriguing as Mohan Singh's life story is, it's also uncomfortable. Instead of a feel-good heroic story, we have a very human story in all of its mess. Someone who had ambition, and those ambitions were thwarted, and made the best life he could out of the circumstances that he was dealt. Thank you.